this session's relating to production planning and specifically delving fairly deeply into a third-party product which can help visualize and help scheduling around production planning. So as Liam said, I'm Matt, worked for Techman for about 16 years, worked with Business Central, Nav and Navision for about 21 years now. Before that, I did spend a few years as a production planner, so I've got some hands-on experience of actually doing this as well. So just want to check you can hear me, everything's clear. Today's session will be about 50 minutes. If there's any queries, as Liam said, just drop it on the comments and he can pick that up. And if I need to stop, he can interrupt me and we can carry on from there. And we'll have a Q&A at the end if there's any questions. So I just want to cover just some of the kind of pain points of a production planner to begin with. You know, what the drivers of needing some some help. What Business Central can offer you at the box. So some of the standard features that are there to help you and some of the standard features that are there to probably not help you. It's a better way of describing it. Then have a look at the Netronic visual production scheduler. I'll come on to who they are and what products they have. We'll look at the pricing of that and then talk about next steps and a Q&A at the end. So I'll just quickly cover off who Netronic are because, as I say, that will be a reasonable part of the presentation. So this is a German company that specialise in writing visual Gantt tools. So they've been doing it for about 40 years, and their whole kind of driver and ethos is around visualization tools that help the user and give positive feedback and are usable for the user. They've worked with Business Central for probably probably 9 years now, maybe even 10 years. And so they understand Nav and Business Central as well as understanding visualizations. They still write visualizations for other software, but Business Central is one of their key areas. And it's cloud-based production scheduling. It doesn't have to be cloud-based. You can have an app as well, make to order, make to stock kind of manufacturers, and as I say, other tools that they can provide as well. So in terms of planning within generally the kind of pain points that occur for a production planner. So the first is changing priorities. So urgent orders. It's always important to satisfy customer demand, but that can be quite catastrophic in terms of a production plan. And understanding the cost of those changes is quite important because you start to lose efficiencies in terms of machine changeover, setup time, etc. Machine breakdowns are fairly similar. They're unplanned stoppages in the plan, and obviously have a knock-on effect from everything after that. Understanding, identifying bottlenecks is an important area as well. That if you know where your pinch points are in production, that's the key bit that you focus on planning. You get that bit right, and everything else will fall into place. And then lastly, material availability. You can't make it if you don't have the raw materials. Not something that Business Central particularly helps brilliantly with, I don't feel. But there are some tools. So within the core kind of setup within Business Central, we have capacity. So we can set up machines, we can set up what are called work centers. So this is areas of production. So you might have a work center for machining, and within that machining work center, you might have 5 different individual machines. And you can say how long for that work center, what capacity you have. So what hours that you work, what shifts you have within that, and therefore what capacity you have. And there's some features on capacity within Business Central where you can say, how many of these machines do I have? You can also set a tolerance on efficiency. So you can say, well, this machine or this work area only works at about 80% efficiency. Therefore, Business Central will plan to around the 80% efficiency. The routings are also a key part to Business Central. So the routings basically say, how do we make something? So what steps do we go through? So we start off with sawing, then we go to drilling, then we go to, I don't know, machining, then we have finishing, painting, packing, whatever those processes happen to be. And those routes can be as simple or as complex as you want. I've seen, many people just having one route, one operation, almost a kind of make it routing, nice and simple. I've seen operations where you've got, 150 different elements to the production process. The routings can be serial, so I go from A to B to C to D to make something, or you can put some parallel elements to that. It's something of a bit of an underutilized functionality within Business Central, parallel routings. But you could say, well, operation A is the first step that happens, and then at the same time, operation B and operation C happen at the same time. So that can help with certain types of processes where you want the same thing going on at the same time, because that is a possibility. So that is something that Business Central supports, and that's using parallel routings. Obviously, the key to an MRP system, an ERP system, is having all of your information. So the demand is obviously what you need to drive the start of the planning process, be it customer orders, be it forecasts, be it transfers from other locations. These are all considered as demand, and they will suggest making things within the system. So it's the MPS and the MRP engine within Business Central that helps you do that. So MPS is the master production schedule. So this is typically the top level item that you're manufacturing, that you're selling to your customer. And any level below that, be it a sub-assembly or a purchased item, is taken into account through the MRP process. And when you run an MRP, it starts at the top level and works it, for everything at the top level, and then goes down one level and calculates that, and then goes down to the next level, and then goes down to the next level. There's a thing in Business Central called low-level code. It might be a field you've seen occasionally and wonder what on earth it is, but it's basically the level in the chain through the bill of materials, 0 being the top level. And then we have our registration process, obviously telling the system that we've made something, because that's important to know as well. It doesn't really affect the planning, because if I have a production order to make 10, if I've made 10 or made none, I still have a production order that's going to supply my customer order of 10, whether that's in stock because I made it or whether I haven't yet produced it. It is still there. So the MPS, the planning engine's happy because I've got demand meeting my supply, obviously, unless it's late. Where Business Central doesn't help, it's not a particular visual tool. If you've ever run the planning worksheet or the requisition worksheet, you get a big list of data. It's not kind of how the human brain absorbs information very well. There aren't many screens where you can really say, okay, what's my plan? What are we making today? You can get some lists of production orders, but if those are spanning a few days, you don't know what's happening on each individual day. There are some elements. If you go to a work center or a machine center, you can see some screens that give you utilization by day, but it's not brilliant information. The other thing that Business Central has but doesn't work particularly well is a thing called capacity constrained resources. So this is whereby you may pick your one machine that's a bottleneck, let's say, and say, okay, I'm only going to plan 90% of that, and the system will not plan anything over that. So in effect, what you'll see is a straight line over time of the production orders. But what it will do is, let's say I get a new production order and it needs 200 minutes of time. It starts when the order's required, and it'll work backwards, finding any slot of time. So it might go, well, there's 3 minutes. Day before, I've got 10 minutes spare. I'll put that in there. 2 days before that, I've got 30 minutes. I'll put that in there. And that really doesn't work in a production environment. So it's a nice idea, but the implementation of it isn't quite right. And then we have material availability. That's always the question you get asked: when can we make it? And unless you start using things like reservations, it's not that obvious as to when you can and can't make it. Reservations can be good. They can also be a bit of an overhead. So, it depends, I guess, how sophisticated you are as to whether you'd want to use reservations. And my favorite is the shortage list within Business Central. And let me show you an example of how this works. So I asked Business Central, I have a production order, when can I make it? So in this scenario, I've got 2 production orders for 10 bicycles of each production order. And in this scenario, I've only got enough to make and only enough components to make 10 bicycles in total, as opposed to the demand there for 20. So against the first production order, I run the material shortage list, and that's what I get. It doesn't really tell me anything. It's basically saying there are no shortages for that production order. Perhaps it could have at least came up with a message that said that rather than just being blank, but it serves a purpose. I then choose the next production order and I run the report and I get the same thing. And that's because the report's looking solely at that production order and not taking other demand into account, which is fairly poor. So it doesn't really help. And this is where, some kind of added features really has been required around production within NAV and Business Central. And this problem has been the same for years. So how can the visual advanced production scheduler help that we've been talking about? So some of the features that we have in there, the fact it's embedded, so I'm not switching to another application. It is an app that we install within Business Central, and it is completely embedded within Business Central. We have drag and drop scheduling, so it's something that makes a bit more sense to me, and if I want to change something, I can just click on it, move it, off we go. That's given me some some nice simplicity rather than having to go and change dates on production orders. I can set alternative resources and coefficients. So what do we mean by that? So let's say I've got I don't know, this particular thing I'm making, this particular operation requires a 3-axis CNC machine. And I could run it on the 5-axis, but the 5-axis takes a lot more setup. It's a very capable machine, but it takes more time to set up and program and get ready. So what you can do is that you can say within Business Central, well, for this particular product I'm making, yes, it's the standard work center or machine center is the 3-axis machine, but I can set my alternative machine to be the 5-axis one. But if I do run it on that, my setup time is 25% more. The run time is about the same, but the setup time is a bit longer. And if you have that set up, when you then drag that particular operation, the first thing that the scheduler will do is grey out those operations that you've decided it can't run on. And so you can see where you can drop it. And when you do drop it on that alternative machine, you actually see the bar expand because it's got a longer setup time. So that's a really cool feature that really helps you understand, well, yeah, I can put it there, but it's going to cost me a bit more time. The other thing we have is a thing around material availability. So what we've done is created a bit of functionality. And when I say we, I guess I need to clarify that. So visual production scheduling, there's been some options within NAV and Business Central over the years. Planner One has been a product that a few of our customers used. It was similar, that it's a Gantt-based scheduling tool. It was fairly powerful in terms of some of the setup you could do, albeit it was relatively complex to set up, and not many customers really exploited it particularly massively. There was also Netronic, who we've been talking about. So they had a simple scheduler, which had no real logic to it. It was just, this is a representation of the plan. You drag it and that's it, nothing else. And then there's other tools that have been around, but really those were the two main kind of visual planning tools that people were using. Now, about 12 months ago, the company that bought Planner One, a company called Dassault Systems, decided that the revenues they were getting on Planner One weren't enough, and so they were going to end the life of the product. They gave 12 months notice, but instead we could still sell it, which obviously we weren't going to do that. So we needed an alternative, and that's where we went and approached the guys in Germany at Netronic, because we had a very good relationship with them anyway. And we said, look, let's get our heads together here and try and fill the gap in the market, because they've got a nice visualization, but it doesn't have much intelligence behind it. So that's where we've been working with them and jointly developing the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler. They already had the VPS, so the Visual Production Scheduler. We've called it the VAPS, so the advanced version. And so we've adding some extra features, and things like alternative resources is something we've added in, the material availability to enhance its capability, and we continue enhancing this product as well. So the material availability functionality is something that we built at Techman, and basically what we do is look at all the demand that's on your production orders in terms of components, and then do in effect an availability calculation looking forwards and allocating and tagging that demand against production orders as we go. So the scenario we had with the bicycle wouldn't happen, because the first one we hit would have allocated the stock. We go to the second production order, I don't have any stock, it's not available. It's kind of like a reservation system, but without having to use reservations, and it's automated. It still obeys reservations, so if you did reserve some products, it takes that into account. Those are, I suppose, take priority over anything else. And if you're reserving, if the allocations and demand are on the same day, you can even choose which type of demand takes priority. So if I've got a sales order and a production order both asking for a component, which one takes it first? We also have multiple color schemes within the product as well. So, and we'll be able to see this, you can choose different schemes to give different representations of information. So let's go and have a look. Just flip over to my Business Central and wake it up. Okay, so first thing is it's an extension. So it is you can see down here, this is an app I've got installed in Business Central. If I'm running in the cloud, I can just go to the marketplace, click on install, get a 30-day trial and go and play with it. It sets itself up with a default configuration for you. So all you do is click install, off you go, and it's there to play with. So the first thing I want to talk about is simulations. So what we have the ability to do here is to create more than one planning simulation without committing it back to the actual production orders themselves. So when you create a simulation, it copies the current set of data within Business Central in terms of your production orders, and then you can go into that simulation and change that around. So if I go and click on my first simulation here, I see fairly typical Gantt view. So what I've got down the left-hand side, if I just collapse these down, the top level here are my work center groups. And this is completely up to you to decide how you want to structure the layout there. So if I open up production, and I just shrink these down, I have my work centers. So like I was talking about earlier, we've got our CNC machines as a work center. Within the work center, we have my machines, and we also have a thing called a standby machine. So the standby resource isn't something that you have to set up in Business Central. This is something that we control completely within the visual tool. And in effect, as a planner, if I've come along to my plan, I want to know what I've already planned and what I haven't yet planned. So any new production orders or any production orders that are changed outside of the visual plan will appear here in the standby resource. So this means that in effect, I need to do something with it. We also have a drop down here which shows capacity. So this is taking the business central capacity from the setup in terms of the capacity for the work centres and the machine centres. And the grey bar is showing me how much of that is used currently based upon the plan that I've currently got. Okay, so when I click on a production order, it actually shows me the links between other orders. I can zoom in on these orders as well. What you'll also see if I open up the the quality, so this is a different work center group, quality checks. So I can also see, and I hope this comes through on the screen share, that I've got some grey horizontal blocks which represents the non-working time. And I can see that my production facility is going from 6 till about 9:30, I think that is. Yet my quality team, they're just on a 9 till 5 rota. So it obeys and understands the calendars that you set up against your work centres and visualises that as well. And also obviously shows you the links through that process. So if I want to schedule something from my standby resource, I can just right click and say apply standard routing, and that will drop it to the standard route within the system that we've set up. When I hover over any of these particular elements, so these are routing lines within Business Central, I see key data that I want to see about that. Now there is set up within the Netronics planning tool that allows you to select which fields you want to show when you hover over the particular line. And the next release, which is due out next month, I believe, the actual caption on the actual resource itself, or on the operation itself, at the moment it just shows the production order, but that is also going to be selectable by the user as to what you want to see from a setup perspective. In terms of the links, so these are the operations for that production order. If I wanted to have, if I had 2 production orders linked to each other via a reservation, which you can have in Business Central, you would also see the links across multiple production orders, but you just get a slightly different line. You get a dotted line to say that you've got a reservation between these, and it understands that as well. Just go back a bit. In terms of planning and kind of moving, so if I wanted to move, let's say this operation from that sort to that sort, I can do so. And you will notice that if I drag it down, it gets bigger on bandsaw 2 as opposed to bandsaw 1. And that's because the alternative operation is set up between the two. And when I start dragging it, you can see that the only available operations are the 2 sawing. It's a sawing operation. I can't put it anywhere else. What I can also do is, okay, I've moved that, I've planned that to start here. If I right click, I can also say schedule successors, as in bring the rest of the operations up as close as I can, because I want to try and squeeze this in. And within this view, I can also see on the right hand side, I've got a vertical line called the required due date. So this is the date in which I have to have this production order finished by. And I also have my work date, which I think I've got a strange work date here. So in effect, I'll see also another line, which is my in effect today, as to where I am now in the process. So the idea is I can't drag anything before now because that's back in time, and I can't go anything past the due date because then that's going to be late, and if I do, it goes red. I also get the ability to see progress on production orders. So if you're using real-time capture of production process like our MES system, then along the bottom of each of these operations you'll see a black line, in effect a progress bar, move along based upon how many has been produced. So the planner can see real time, where are we in that particular production order. So this is a production order view that we've come in at. And in effect, what we're saying in setup, we've said, sorry, production order status view. So for the different status of different production orders, I want a different view, but we do have other views that we can go and look at. So an item view basically allows me to color items individually. So if I go and take this one, what I'm actually doing here in this scenario is I'm actually planning, if I go and show you the products I've got set up on this system, I've got some alloy wheels set up within this system, and they've all got their individual colors. But what I've done is within each individual item, I've gone in here and I can choose against the item whatever a color I want. You've got about, I think it's about 16.9 million different colors you can choose from. And that's for this particular item. So I've set that to black. It's probably not the best to visualize because you can't see the text particularly well, but the color's telling me the actual color of the wheel. Now, if I'm looking at the painting line, then that's really important to me because actually I want to try and put all the same colors together to try and get some efficiencies on clean down and change over time. I've also got a machine center and work center view. So again, you can set against those records whatever color you want. So different types of machines or work centers can have different colors if that's of use in terms of that view. Production order view. This is useful because I can double click on a production order, by the way, and that'll actually open up the production order. I am in Business Central still, but an individual production order you can color as well. So if I've got an urgent one, I might color it red. Now, bear in mind that this is this is just a field that's been added into Business Central through that application. You can create additional applications as a customization, let's say, that says if it's for this particular customer, I want it to be this particular color. So, just because there's a color there where you set it manually, there's nothing to stop you going coding that and adding and enhancing what's there as standard out the box as well. Production order status view is where we started. Progress view, in effect, this is telling me anything that's in red, it's late. So that's a useful view as a planner. That might be my first port of call. Right, let's deal with anything late first. Then I'm going to go and deal with the urgent ones because they're flagged as particular color. Availability view. So this is using the production, the add-in that we've created within this around material availability. So different colors can mean, and we can choose whatever color makes sense to us as to whether the material is available or not for this particular production order. Can I actually start making this? And then a wait times view is the coloring there is showing me, have I got gaps between operations? So, and if it's red, let's say there might be a particular operation where I've got a 3-day gap where nothing's happening. So actually, I've got the opportunity there to bring those and squeeze those particular production orders up. So we use different views because there's a lot of different scenarios that I want to understand, and trying to get all of that in one view, it would just be so busy, it wouldn't make sense. So we have different views, so you can flick between those different color views and actually kind of understand what it is that's happening. If I just go back onto one of these operations, right click again, I just want to talk around some of the options. So schedule successors, we did before, where if I've moved something, if I bring that forward, let's say, if I right click and say schedule successors, it pulls everything after upwards a bit. We can choose an alternative routing here. So if there is one set up, it can just drop it onto that. And we can apply a standard routing, which is whatever routing we've got set up against a particular product within the system. We also have a thing called pinning. So what does pinning mean? So in effect, what this is I know that I can actually produce more at the same time than the system thinks. So this is something exceptional perhaps that's happened. So if I go over here and look at this, I can see this grey one here. There's a little lock on it, and that means it's pinned. And that is saying that it's pinned and not taken into capacity. So that's pinned without capacity consumption. So that's basically saying, yeah, I know that I've got an extra person in, it's not on the system, we can do that. That's fine. So that means I can schedule something else at the same time. I can also pin an operation with capacity, and that will then not allow anything else. But if I pin it, what it means is that if I, for instance, I've got lots of things pinned here, pin with capacity blocked. If I start moving things around, it won't try and reschedule the operation. I'm saying, no, that's fixed, that's not moving. I can't go backwards and I can't therefore push that operation back. If I unpin it and then do that, it should let me do it. Let me try that one, pin. So if I say schedule successors, nothing's happening for that because it's pinned. But if I unpin it and then schedule my successors, it allows it to be pulled forward. So it's a way of putting a stake into that particular operation, saying that's not changing. What we've also got from right click as well is focus. So if I have, let me just open up some of these, a lot of machines, then if I've got operations dropping down between different machines, you might end up doing a lot of scrolling up and down to see that. So what you can actually do is you can say set the focus, and what that does is just show the operations that this particular production order relates to. So it just means that I can get an easy view of that particular production order. The other tool that we have within the system as well, which really makes it a lot easier, is where we talked about things like unplanned breakdowns. So what I can do is just right click on a particular area and I can define downtime. And I can say, okay, machine broken, something nice and simple. And yeah, we suspect this is going to go until about 11 o'clock. Say, okay. And that then blocks out that particular machine for any capacity. So I can't now drag any operations onto that. What I might also say is, but because we've had that problem, I'm going to be putting a night shift on. And that's going to be going through to the 23rd about 6 o'clock. Okay, I'm not sure what's happened there. Let's just do it till the end of the day. And that's added in, so the green section is basically adding in additional available time that I can then drag operations onto. So it's a way of managing that uptime and downtime within the system. So next thing I want to talk about is come out of the scheduler and talk about material availability. So just go here. Up here even. So this is the current allocations that's been defined in the system. So I'll clear those out and I'll go and recalculate that. That's completed. It's very quick to do this. So what this has basically done is looked at all the components against the production orders and has said, okay, from today going forwards, can I peg this as being available? And only if all of the components on a production order are available, does it consider it available? And it's at what point are they all available? So they may not all be available today, but if in 7 days time, because I've got a purchase order coming in, that production order could actually be made, then that will be set as my earliest material availability. And if I don't ever have any, then obviously it's not set at all. So if I take, let's say, production order 3 here, we've got some availability. So if I go back into here and then look at the production order, what I've got on the line of the production order here is an earliest material availability date. So that's gone through and calculated that actually 20th of May 20, which is today. Yeah, I can actually make that, and I'm free to go and start planning through that process. Okay, so that's the kind of key, look and feel of the visual planner. Yeah, the aim is to keep it straightforward and to not over complex any processes, but not over complicate for the user in terms of planning. In terms of version support, so the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler is from Business Central version 14 onwards. If you have a version before that, there is the Visual Production Scheduler, which has some of those features, but not everything. And I'll come on to that in a bit. What is the difference between those two? So the Visual Production Scheduler, it's an integrated product, drag and drop. So you still see the Gantt, you can still drag and drop, and you can still get a certain level of choice of color views, not to the degree in the advanced one. And you can still click on the orders and open up the production orders. So you can still plan from it, but it doesn't have some of those tools that help you with that. And the advanced tool adds, it does the same kind of thing, but it adds some semi-automatic scheduling and finite capacity scheduling. So unless you pin an operation, it won't let you try and do two things at the same time at the same machine. We've got things like the alternative routings, we've got pinning, material availability, and some of those extra color views as well add to the products to help you or help the planner through that process. So how much does it cost? The all important question. So if you were to buy it and you are on a perpetual license, i.e. you bought your BC nav license, then it depends how many users you've got in your system. It's not necessarily how many users using the planner, it's how many users are in your systems. That's kind of that's 4 users, and that's kind of defining the scale of the operation. So the top line there going across the VAPS, so for let's say for 16 to 25 users, it's €9,500. The simpler version is €4,500. So you can kind of see the difference between the two. It's about the same as the scale goes up. But what I would say is that the features that we've got on the roadmap for the advanced scheduler, really is going to add an awful lot of value into the product. The next thing we've just started mapping out, for example, is the intelligence around changeover. So let's say we've got a paint line and I've got multiple colors that run through that, and I can say, well, if I'm going from white to black, it's fine, but if I'm going from black to white, actually that needs a lot of changeover. So what it can actually do is that you can set up those different parameters as to how long it takes in terms of changeover times between different attributes, and the system can then auto schedule based for a period, let's say for a week, and work out the best sequence in terms of that production. That can also work for things like food with allergens as well. If you're on a SaaS license, then it's €19 per full user per month for the VAPS, or 9 for the VPS. They also have a couple of products around jobs and resource scheduling if you do any of that kind of process. So in terms of next steps, just kind of if it's a product of interest, we can organise demos, speak to sales guys, your account manager, hello@techman.co.uk, all those, or just give us a call. Anybody will be able to pick up and help on that. So if you're on a SaaS version, you can just install a free version with a 30-day trial and have a play. It is literally, once you've installed it, it'll just work with all your production orders and machine centers, work centers capacity that you've currently got set up.